let's take a look at installing the crystal. Now, underneath the crystal, there's a long bar which indicates how the part should be installed. So what you want to do is take the long side of the component and line it up with the bar. Now, on the bottom of the chip, there's actually no physical pins that exit this part and make it easy to solder. You've got to put solder on these 4 pads on the bottom and somehow get it underneath. So how we're going to go about doing that is we're going to start off by putting a tiny little bit of solder on each one of the pads. And you'll note here that what I do to do this is I touch the pad and heat up the pad, and then I bring the solder into the pad. Okay, you don't want to touch the iron because then the solder will jump to the iron. So if you want it on the pad, make the pad hot. So there we have a little bit of solder down, maybe like 0.5 millimeters or less. And now we need to put a little bit of flux on so that when we start soldering it, it will reflow properly and connect to the bottom of the part. So here I'm putting a little bit of flux on. Flux also helps hold the part in place while we hot air it. So here I do my best to get the part standing on top of the little pads and stuck in place a little bit with the flux. So that looks pretty good. It's going to move around a little bit as you solder it, so don't be too concerned about getting it perfect at this point. So I'm bringing in the hot air gun. I've got the gun set to about 900 degrees, which makes the air coming out about 700. And you can see, did you see that up on the left? That upper left pad just went liquid and it wicked underneath the part. So I've got the top 2 pads soldered, but the bottom ones have not been soldered yet. So I'm coming in again. I'm going to try and center it a little bit better. So there we go. And then I'm going to try and make sure there's the bottom left one just went under. I'm trying to make sure that the solder wicks under all 4 corners, and then I know it's soldered down. Okay, let's put in the capacitors for the crystal. And these are going to be 9 picofarad capacitors, and they're going to be marked on the bottom of the packaging with a 9. So I've soldered in the top pin of each one, or the top pad of each capacitor. And yes, you'll note that I've actually soldered in the top pad of R15. So I made an error here, and I put the capacitor C12 in the R15 spot. I went back later and fixed that up. So the 9 picofarad capacitors, they've got more of a tan color than the 1 microfarads, and that's kind of how you can identify them. The capacitors used in this project, they're all a little bit different in color, and under the microscope you can tell which one is which. So I'm trying to get this centered really, really nicely to make it look perfect. I'm probably being a little bit fussy. There's 1 capacitor is in place, and now I'm going to bring in the second capacitor, and I'm going to put it in the wrong place. But here I'm trying to hold it in place. I'm a little shaky, trying to get it into place and then solder it on. Oh, and then I moved it. There we go. Those look pretty close. I might touch them up a little bit later. And now that I got one side done, I'm going to go in and touch up the other side. And then, because I burnt off all the flux, I'll touch up the top one. And then I guess I decided this one just wasn't perfect. That looks a little bit better. And then I go in and I touch up the bottom side. So there we have the crystal and the capacitors in place.